welcome to the final LinkedIn Live from PGC, the final Scale Up, that's a good start, Scale Up Stateside review of the year with PGC. So thank you for joining me, Rick and Bethan. So today what we're going to be doing is just reviewing 2024 and then also looking and previewing 2025 as well. We've got lots of stats and data as always to bring you as well, which will be really exciting. But also what we'll be doing is taking a look at some of the key themes that we've seen throughout this year, looking at kind of what we've maybe identified and what we've seen from our clients in the market of actually has been impacting recruitment agencies on the ground, making placements in the US, and then looking at if they're going to continue or what's going to change moving forward into 2025 as well for you too. So we will be covering all of that in the next 30 minutes. We do also have a comments and section. So if you've got any questions, please do add them into the comments as well as we go, and we'll try to answer them. If we can't, then we'll make sure to pick up with you afterwards as well. Just to introduce ourselves a little bit. So I'm Will Pendleton. I'm the head of US expansion here at PGC, and also joined by me today are two of the guys from my team. So we've got Rick and we've got Bethan. So Rick, do you want to say hello and a bit of an intro on yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Rick. I'm one of the expansion consultants in Will's team. So very similar to Beth, I'm taking all your content here, Beth. You can just say hello. But we basically speak to clients who are looking to expand into the US, speak to them every day. Huge part of our client base is recruitment agencies, and I myself have worked in sort of UK payroll for, or without giving away my age, a long time before starting at PGC. So a lot of experience supporting the recruitment agencies. So yeah, exciting, sort of helping them with their expansion into the US. So yeah, we go through stats all day, every day. So hopefully we can share some insights on this year's performance, and hopefully next as you make a venture into the US.
Absolutely, thank you. And then same question to you, Bethan.
Hey everyone, I'm Bethan, also a US expansion consultant, and then pretty much what Rick said. I also have experience in the UK payroll background, so I've been working with recruitment agencies, not half as long as Rick has, but for a few years. So again, have that knowledge of sort of the UK market and now the US market. So really excited to be chatting through the round of 2024, and then, as the guys said, predictions for 2025 as well.
Right, the claws are out as we get started, so it should be a spicy between you two. For anybody that doesn't know PGC, we are a North American employer of record, and we would specialise in the North American market solely for 24 years. So a lot of the information that you'll hear today is our experience of helping staffing and recruitment agencies, primarily from the UK, but a lot of them just international markets in general, along with their expansion, and then scale up in the US as well too. So we've helped countless agencies throughout those 24 years, and we've had the benefit of learning from them what they found has worked in the market, what hasn't worked in the market, which is almost more important, isn't it? And then also our kind of own experience of being an American company and helping with those kind of cultural differences when it comes to starting in that new market as well. And primarily what we do as an employer of record is support recruitment agencies to build a scalable and compliant contract book of business in America as well too. So if that's something that's on your tick list for 2025, then absolutely please reach out to myself and any of the team. We'd love to talk to you about your plans, whether you're just getting started, whether you do perm and you're looking to add contract, whether you do all of those things and you're just looking to have a quick conversation about anything you might hear today, or maybe just some of your plans in general that you just don't necessarily know who to talk to. Anything US or North America related, always come and have a chat with us here at PGC as well for you too. But the reason that everyone's here is because we want to look at back at 2024 and a look forward at 2025 as well. So Bethan, I know you've been doing a deep dive into the trends and the stats and things from 2024. So do you want to give everybody listening a bit of an overview of what's happened so far in 2024?
Yeah, absolutely. So the US staffing industry in 2024 is estimated as of the end of the year to be worth around $189 billion. Absolutely huge. Unsurprisingly, it still takes top spot. We always famously say it's more revenue than the next top 7 countries combined, and 2024 is exactly the same. Of that $189 billion, about $170 billion will be generated from the temporary staffing industry, which is just shy of 90%, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, that being said, that has been around a 10% decline from 2023, which we've probably all seen over the past sort of 12 months or so. Few reasons for that. The main one is mainly sort of a pullback from those real unsustainable levels. I think when all companies look through certainly the past 6-7 years of their stats, everybody's got that really weird period in the middle where it either shot straight up or went straight down during the pandemic. Obviously in the US, the healthcare sector had a huge boom. There was a lot of demand in the healthcare sector, a lot of traveling nurses. That's now decreased. So that's coming down year on year. It's plateauing, it's decreasing. So the healthcare sector as a whole has had a 19% decline in 2024, which obviously is bringing those numbers right down. Couple of other reasons, just generally a little bit of uncertainty. We've seen a couple of large mass scale layoffs, so like Google, Microsoft, everybody's probably read all them online. So that has been a slight decrease, although that being said, it is sort of plateauing to pre-pandemic levels, which we're all pretty comfortable with.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, although it is definitely the biggest market, it's definitely not been all singing or dancing. But if you look, I think, like you said, Bethan, across the whole globe, it's been that story all year round as well. And I think a lot of those things continue across all different markets, don't they? The uncertainty, you know, we've had a couple of big elections across some of the key markets globally as well, which always kind of promotes a little bit of uncertainty in the run up to those as well. And then also, like you said, I think we're still seeing the repercussions of that kind of post-COVID kind of bounce back as well, and things definitely settling out. But I think, like you said, the key thing to remember there is if you look back at pre-COVID levels, which is probably the last fair year to compare to, everything's still up as well. So it's definitely still, you know, although it's been a tougher market, it's still a huge opportunity as well, which is really important to know as well.
Absolutely. And loads of reasons to be optimistic for 2025. So
Great.
Exactly as we said, yeah, there's lots of good signs ahead of 2025. And towards the end of this session, we'll look into some of the expected stats. But just from conversations that we've had, a lot of large corporations have said that their contingent workforce will stay the same, if not grow over the next few years. Short-term stats and long-term stats are only predicting growth. We're also still seeing that huge shift to remote working. So obviously that was accelerated by the pandemic. But a lot of people are also still working towards remote working, hybrid working. So there's a lot of end clients who are now much more comfortable with hiring overseas, hiring across the US or globally. So yeah, there is still lots of positives, and also lots of positives to the staffing agencies. I think because these corporations are now very comfortable with hiring, as I say, across the US or across the world, they might not have the in-house capabilities to do that. So seeking recruitment agencies to help with that expansion and really maximising that demand in remote working as well. So there is still lots of positives.
Definitely. I think one of the trends that we've noticed this year as well is the amount of agencies that we've been speaking to that have now been involved in more of those kind of recruitment workforce technology platforms, whether it's a platform, whether it's kind of an MSP or, you know, a big vendor system or whatever. And the growth of kind of HR tech is kind of, you know, so quick as well. And it's been really, really interesting to hear a lot of them coming up against more and more of those kind of platforms and onboarding procedures and things with clients as well. I think the message that we've heard as well from a lot of our client base is that actually, while that can sometimes make the life of a talent acquisition, so an in-house recruiter, slightly easier because they have access to you know, ways of maybe reaching candidates that, or maybe en masse, that they hadn't before. Actually, what these platforms still are not great at, and I don't think ever will be great at, is finding that really niche, passive, hard to find talent, which is obviously exactly what recruitment agencies specialize in as well too. So I think there may be slightly more of that as kind of, you know, tech platforms are only going to develop and get more and more plentiful. However, I think what that will necessarily do is probably actually keep supporting with that, maybe the higher volume work, so that a lot of those platforms are maybe designed to go and help with, where actually the real areas of growth and the areas that we see clients really be successful in when they get started in the US is really having that kind of niche and going after that SME level client as well that maybe can't afford those tech platforms, because they obviously still have those talent needs and need to rely on recruitment talent to be able to find that as well too. So don't be, I would say, alarmed if you start coming up against more and more in-house teams that say, oh, we use this or that, or yeah, we need you to onboard on this. Actually, there will always be that demand for true kind of niche recruiters as well too.
It's a really good point, Will. It reminds me of a conversation that we had a guest speaker when we were in Miami. That's the first reference to the fact we've been to the US this year as well.
You've been to the US? You never mentioned it or anything.
When we went to Miami, we had actually a speaker from an MSP, and they were saying obviously they can work off frameworks for recruitment agencies, but the main reason they do that is the requirement to find a niche specialist role that they're really finding it difficult to find. So if that's your bread and butter as a recruiter, if you're only placing those specialists and have that niche expertise, obviously it's going to stand you in good stead for building a successful business, but it can be your way into those larger opportunities as well. Again, I was listening to a podcast, and a recruiter was mentioning that was their way into real big firms, in that they look for their biggest challenge. You want to, those sort of higher volume roles that can be placed are great and can generate huge revenue. But if you're struggling to get into those clients, find the hardest role that they're looking for, and that if your niche specialism is already in that, then you're going to find it easier than your competitors anyway. So loads and loads of opportunity, especially within, like Bethan said, within contract, for those companies during economic pressures and challenges. They want to stay more agile, so they're looking at more project-based work. If you can be the one recruiter who offers that niche specialism and can place that role that no one else can, it then just gets your foot in the door to then build with that client as well. I think a few of our clients have definitely found success doing that.
Definitely. Well, I think while we're on the subject of different markets and different sectors, it'll be really helpful to look at what those kind of key sectors were, and maybe the ones that had the highest growth, and kind of the ones that maybe had the lowest growth as well in 2024. So Rick, can you do us a bit of a deep dive on kind of the specific sectors and where you saw the change this year?
Yeah, I think at the top of all the stats, when we see both in terms of volume, healthcare obviously is always going to be the biggest. If you look at the top employer in any of the states, the hospitals are always up there. So although it's seen that 19% fall, it's showing on all the stats as the one that's had the biggest pullback, but it is still a huge industry. But aside from sort of healthcare, some of the top performing sectors are engineering. It's actually seen a growth this year, which is amazing. Finance, again, just continuing to show growth. Marketing and creative, we're seeing good growth in, and obviously tech as well. So even though some of those, like Beth said, have seen slight pullback and decreases back to previous levels, they're still very strong markets, and other markets have shown probably more of a pullback. So they're up there with the top performing. Life sciences has been a challenging sector for all. I'm sure life science agencies on this webinar will attest to that, but it's still up there with a really good performing industry. So don't be disheartened by the fact that it may have been a little bit more challenging. There is still huge opportunity within those sectors. So they're the sectors sort of seeing sort of the biggest growth. Engineering, just to touch on a little bit more, is sort of probably surprising as the biggest one. There's just so much opportunity in engineering. I worked when I was in the UK. Working with UK agencies, I sort of specialised in engineering and construction, and so my mind always goes to like, oh, engineering must be like civil engineering or in trade, so electrical engineering, stuff like that. But if you think about it, engineering is such a broad sector. You've got sort of computer engineering in there, which links into the growth of IT as well. You've got robotics in there, huge for engineering, and we've done an AI ebook on looking at AI as a whole and sort of that robotics and all those different machine learning and all the different things within AI, which sort of links into both engineering and IT. We've also done an engineering ebook, funnily enough, which sort of helps assess the both. So if you are looking for more data on either of those sectors, you can dive into our resource. But engineering, just because it is such a broad sector, there is a lot of investment from the government, and Will mentioned earlier about that uncertainty. Those projections for the US government pledged loads of money to energy and renewables. Whether that pulls back a little bit, we don't know. There is that uncertainty, but still huge opportunity, even if a percentage of those pledges go forward. And then within IT, we all know, we mention regularly to our clients, in this sort of technical age, as anywhere grows, so as any economy grows, there's huge pressure on infrastructure, and tech infrastructure especially, because there's so much requirement for tech in these days. So whether that be, I don't know, cybersecurity to protect the infrastructure, whether that be sort of future tech to develop new ways of working. That's why we see the huge growth and continued growth of IT, and we definitely see that with our clients as well. And we've mentioned AI as well. That's so much investment in AI. The figures of like Google and Meta and all these companies that are just making daft investment into AI. Obviously, they need people to run those projects. So IT, I think, and engineering, we've seen as the top performing. The stats show us as the top performing, and obviously that just creates even more opportunity in future.
Yeah, definitely. I also think an interesting one when you look at the stats from last year, and talking to stats, like Rick mentioned, we will be sharing our engineering ebook with you afterwards as well. If there is any specific markets, and when we mean markets, we both mean locations and sectors as well. Our website is a brilliant place to go to, and you can basically see loads of different blogs on kind of current trends and also kind of current legislation updates that affect recruiters, but also specific market research as well too. So always make sure you're utilising that as a free resource for you as well. But one of the things that we've noticed from the stats specifically is that office and administration has had a 3.5% decline, where, like you mentioned, Rick, you look at kind of computers, has had nearly a 13% boost as well, or predicted to grow over the next 10 years by 13%, and office and admin is predicted to continue to fall as well. You would imagine that they're linked from the growth of AI and assistants and things, virtual assistants, etc. Too. So that's just one of those things, like you mentioned, engineering, such a touch-all of an industry, isn't it? And how those things can actually both positively affect lots of sectors, but also negatively affect others by kind of rediverting that as well. So definitely a lot to watch out for in 2025 from a kind of a market perspective as well. And then, have you seen any notice or any trends from a location perspective, or any of the data that we've been looking into, kind of more specifics on what states are the best or the biggest for? Because that's always everyone's favorite question, is where should I go in the US, or where's next?
Yeah, exactly. It's probably one of the best conversations we have with clients, right? Because they've got this exciting new project. They're looking to work the US market, and then you're looking at those different locations because the States is so big. So you're trying to understand not only where the best place to go is, both for your lifestyle or for the fact that you work in that market you want to, but looking at the stats, just understanding where the growth areas are, where most staffing is based, and for your industry is which are the growth areas. So we go through the top 5 states quite regularly to help build that strategy when you're attacking the States. And California still sits during 2024 as number 1. We say it over and over again. The economy in California is ridiculously big. If it was its own country, it'd be the 5th biggest country. It's just huge. So obviously massive growth and continued size of the economy and staffing in California. Texas, again, really strong performing state. It's huge again, Texas. You've got those sort of 3 main cities within Texas in Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston, all have their own specialisms in terms of sectors. So that's always stayed up strong. In terms of revenue generated, that's number 2 in the list. And we've seen from our own internal stats of sort of where contractors are being placed that Texas has risen as well up into number 3. But Florida, New York still performing really well. But the one I wanted to mention was North Carolina. And we mention on our calls all the time that southern migration of talent from sort of the New York, California, the standard hubs of business down south during COVID. And that I always talk about Florida being one of those areas. Why wouldn't you want to live on the beach in Florida, right? But it's starting to seep up into those more northern states of Florida. So, Atlanta and Georgia is huge. Georgia's a great up and coming state, but North Carolina, it has shown huge growth. So Raleigh, Charlotte, two states that have been absolutely amazing in terms of focus on growing their economy, opportunities in IT, in finance, in engineering, all these top sectors that we mentioned. And that's actually, we've seen that as in terms of the onboards we've seen from contractors placed, it's moved up to 4th, actually above Florida. So we talk about that seepage of opportunity from Florida into those other areas. That's been nailed by our stats for 2024. We've actually seen more contractors placed in North Carolina than we have Florida so far.
Definitely. I think you've sold everybody on North Carolina, Rick. I think everyone's going to be moving there next as well. I think also just quickly just to touch on compliance as well, and kind of some of the laws that we've seen come into effect this year, because obviously it's not everybody's favourite subject, but it's really important, because if you get it wrong, that's when the huge penalties and things come up for you as well. So some of the more kind of pressing ones that affect recruitment agencies is, first of all, there's been a few changes to overtime legislation. Now, overtime isn't necessarily something that, if you're placing permanent employees, that you might necessarily come across. And if you're placing contract workers, then you will definitely come across it, and you'll know that the laws around overtime. But overtime does actually affect salaried workers too. So if you're not paid above a certain threshold, you're actually still entitled to overtime in the US as well. And in July, they actually changed the threshold for overtime exemption. So if you were paid above that threshold, you would no longer have to be paid overtime. And that caused a bit of havoc, actually, because if you think about some of the higher salaried places like New York, for example, where to kind of do kind of maybe a normal level job, you have to be paid a fairly high wage, a bit like London, to kind of compete and have an affordable lifestyle. The threshold then kind of actually was brought lower, and that affected lots of people there. So a lot of employees in New York had to rethink about recategorizing their roles, or actually thinking of even giving raises and things to kind of combat the overtime law. So that was one of the things that happened that the Department of Labour passed as well. And then also some of the other things to think about was that actually I believe that is potentially going to be repealed. So that's when we talk about how quickly things can change. That was only passed in July, and then that's one of the things that's already up for being kind of pushed back on. So that's why you've always got to have your finger on the pulse with the US. Is as soon as something is passed, something can also be kind of appealed and changed as well too. So that's definitely one that's kind of currently coming out of half the press of the US legal system. And then so many other ones as well. For example, it's more around rights towards freelancers. So if you are working with independent contractors, so people who either run their own companies or work as sole traders, as we would think of in the UK, there's a lot more legislation being passed to provide protections for these workers, because technically if you're a business to business, there's really very little that you have in the way of protections versus if you're an employee. And what that led to was a lot of freelancers being taken advantage of on effectively a paid when paid basis. So clients kind of negotiating really long payment terms or denying payments and delaying payments and things. And actually that's been started to be taken notice of by the different state governments. So Illinois have brought out the Freelancer Worker Protection Act. New York have got the Freelancers Isn't Free Act as well. And basically we're expecting to see more and more of that legislation come in. So the independent contractor space is just going to kind of become more and more regulated as well for you too. One thing that I definitely worth thought was mentioning is to recruiters, is one thing that will affect every single person that makes a placement, is there's a piece of legislation called pay transparency law. And what that means is you have to be transparent on what you're paying your employees. So if you do a job ad, which obviously you all will be doing, you have to now advertise a minimum and a maximum salary range in specific states. And there's actually 4 states that's now all going to be the case for 2025. So 4 new ones are Illinois, Minnesota, New Jersey, and Vermont as well. So especially, you can imagine Illinois and New Jersey being ones that are fairly kind of big markets, even Minnesota as well. Vermont, maybe if you're placing people in the Ben & Jerry's factory or ski instructors, that might obviously affect you. But those other markets, definitely ones where it's worth understanding that will only change and more will be added. So it's really kind of important to remember that actually a lot of people just take the rule that we're going to put a minimum and a maximum on every job ad, because then it doesn't matter where in the US that your workers are, you're not going to fall foul of legislation in those states as well. So Bethan, rounding out the last 5 minutes for us, can you give us a bit of a look forward at 2025? What's everyone going to get excited about? What's everyone going to see? And then what we'll do is we'll do this next year and we'll hold your feet to the fire and see if any of this actually came true.
Okay, don't quote me on any of this. There's a lot of moving parts when we try and predict the US staffing industry for a whole year. I think if we looked at like a best case scenario, it would be GDP growth between sort of 1.8 and 2.2%, lower interest rates, no recession. For the staffing industry as a whole, it is predicted to grow by 5%, so that'll reach about $193.3 billion. And the temporary staffing industry will generate about $178 billion of that, which is incredible. So fingers crossed for a 5% growth. We spoke about some specific industries, but we looked at some of the top ones Rick's just mentioned and predictions. A lot of our clients work within these industries. So the IT temporary staffing market is expected to increase by 5%. Life sciences expected to increase by 4%, and engineering a huge 6% predicted increase in 2025. So all really positive, really amazing signs. So yeah, don't hold me to that, but that's the predictions.
One of the stats I saw there was the IT. Was a couple. One was the IT staffing sector in the US is bigger than or the same size as the whole of the UK market. So if you think you're working one industry in the UK, and then you're going on one sector is the size of the whole UK market. So IT is just huge. I think it's $40 billion it's projected to be worth over. So yeah, huge growth. And interestingly, on stats, and projections for 2025, just a bit of like good news is that SIA, who do a lot of our analysis as partners, they do a bit of a survey with recruitment firms. The last month survey of the firms that they surveyed, 29% of them reported an increase in sales, an increase in staff for the new year, and their marketing efforts for the new year as well, because they're seeing that growth in the US. So really good things to take into the new year, and especially if you're trying to make the most of that 5% growth, like Bethan said. Yeah, some really real positives to go along with that. Not only the growth, but what staffing firms are seeing right now. It's the most recent monthly report. So yeah, thought that was really positive. Thought I'd share that.
Brilliant. Always nice to have a bit of positivity, especially after what's been a trickier year, and probably trickier 2 years than maybe a lot of people were hoping for. Definitely seeing a lot of that kind of the green shoots from all the work that you've been doing and laying that groundwork is starting to come through now, and you're starting to see that in the market as well. And also, just the fact that the economy itself in the US is predicted to grow after a couple of years of heavy inflation. And again, all these things are suggesting that actually 2025 is going to be a much more positive year for the market as well, which is really exciting. So there's never been a better time to get started or double down on your efforts as well for you too. And talking about that, wrapping up, guys, Bethan, I'm going to come to you first. If you had to give everybody on this call one or two very quick pieces of advice that they can take forward into 2025, what would those be that you would tell them?
Aside from obviously taking on the US market, that's a given. I would say don't miss out on contract opportunities. We keep talking about the temporary revenue, the proportion that holds. The stats around that are phenomenal. I often speak with clients who say they turn down endless opportunities because they just don't explore the contract market. So I would say permanent contract, tackle the US. And also, we keep saying it, but treat each state like a completely different country. We've seen the stats are completely different state by state, but also your BD is going to be completely different state by state as well. But we can support with all those conversations.
Yeah, brilliant. Rick?
Very simple. We say it over and over again, keep it niche or niche, as they say in some states. I've had a handful, even over the past few months, of recruitment clients who have been working the market for 3 to 6 months, come and had a strategy call with us at PGC. We've helped them understand and build a strategy to keep it niche and go in to have conversations about one specific role in one specific sector and seeing immediate success. So it's just getting that foot in the door. It can be a daunting place, the US. It's absolutely massive. So using the advice that Bethan's given and keeping it niche with the strategy to go in and have a clear value proposition to help and show intent to those clients, just absolutely key in being successful. So that would be my tip. Keep it niche.
Fantastic. Well, perfect, guys. That was absolutely bang on time. So there was almost like we planned it, wasn't it? So thank you very much for everybody for joining us, and thank you for joining us throughout the whole year as well. It's been a pleasure to have you. I hope you've enjoyed the Scale Up Stateside podcasts throughout the year as well. All these are banked on our website or Spotify or Apple or Sound Like a Podcast now, or wherever you get your podcasts. But they genuinely are. And then we have lots of banked episodes with recruitment founders who've been maybe in your shoes if you're getting started or scaling, and kind of share their advice too. So maybe over the Christmas period, if you've got a bit of quiet time when your clients aren't picking up the phone, it's definitely a time to kind of go back and have a read through them. If you do want to speak about anything about your 2025 plans, maybe it's getting started and we don't know where to begin, maybe it's we're looking to scale up properly and actually kind of maybe take this further on, or maybe even open up a contract book, or kind of we're really struggling to open up that contract book. What can we do? Rick, Bethan, myself are always available to have a call. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out at all. Any questions that you have, we're always here to help as well. Thank you very much, everybody, for sharing the info today. Thank you, Rick and Bethan. And I hope everybody has a very happy holidays.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.